Hey everyone, Renee Jane here. Let's make sure I'm recording. Looks like we're all good. Hi, so I just want to jump on here. I hope you can join me live, and if you are, feel free to leave some comments below. I want to talk about feeling stuck, being in this place where we kind of feel like we don't know what to do with our food and our health and our body. And the first thing, just shutting all my stuff down so I don't get distracted. The first thing I want to share with all of you, when I say feeling stuck, it's really important that I say this. I don't look at our health or even our relationship with our body as like some magical, we're going to get there and then arrive and then we'll feel amazing and wonderful for the rest of our lives. Although I hope we do feel amazing and wonderful for the rest of our lives. I just want to be really real and acknowledge that there's ups and downs with our body and our health, and the way we eat is never going to be the exact same all the time. So as an example, the name that I have used for our business here, my business, is called Love Yourself Naked. And to me, that has always described a practice of choosing daily to love. Sometimes we can't even think about loving ourselves. Sometimes it's just liking or showing compassion for ourselves, or just practicing a little ounce of self-care, maybe a little bit of trust some days. But again, it's a practice. It's not like we're going to get there and arrive and say, okay, I love myself, everything's all good. And so I see that very much the same way with food. And I really wanted to jump on today and connect with some people and to talk a little bit about feeling stuck with our food and our body, particularly because I did a community webinar in the last week, more on my blog and on YouTube, and then also chatted a little bit yesterday here on Facebook, also for those of you who are tuning in live. And I've gotten a lot of responses and people who really resonated with what I had to share. And so I can post that link below if you're interested in checking that out. But I'm not going to go through the whole thing. But in a nutshell, I was sharing a bit of a story and my experience with my body and my food. And I'm going to just recap a bit of it because I think it's really relevant to feeling stuck. So the first part is that you don't need to be a holistic nutrition practitioner to feel connected to what I'm sharing. Because I really do believe, even though if we don't feel it now, we have the capacity to be really connected intuitively to what it is that we need right now. And part of the reason I do this work is because it chose me. I used to be somebody who really preferred to sit on the couch under a blanket with a bag of Oreo cookies and smoking cigarettes. And I used a lot of addictive things to numb out. And so it's been a struggle in my life to be kind of with the uncomfortableness of not having something to numb. And the best news from that is it has taught me that one of the things that I was doing was really living my life kind of, I'm just going to describe it this way, from the neck up. So I was not really connected to what was going on in my body. And I thought that my brain was my intuition. And I thought those were the same thing. It turns out I was wrong. Turns out that my emotions were all over the place and I wasn't really sure what my body needed. I thought when I craved sugar that was my intuition telling me that's what I needed. And by the way, on a side note, it doesn't mean that our bodies don't need sweet sometimes, because that can be pleasurable. That's a whole nother conversation. So back to really getting to this root of what does it mean to be stuck and why do we feel so stuck? So the first step that I acknowledged back then was that I really needed to have a break from some of the things that I felt I needed so desperately. And so one of them was cheese, for example. Another one, of course, as I mentioned, was sugar. And I was also just kind of used to eating the same things all the time. And this was around 2002. And I was on a beach in Jamaica, and I was getting a lot of migraine headaches, and I was feeling uncomfortable in my body, and so much physical stuff going on that I was kind of afraid to eat, to drink any alcohol, to do anything, because I felt like if I did anything, I could trigger another migraine. And I remember this friend sharing with me that she had done a detox. And I didn't know anything about detoxes back then. And so I figured I would try it. And I went home and I did this detox. And I didn't do it perfect. Who does, I guess. But what I did learn is I learned how to trust myself for the very first time, that I could follow through on something food related that I never thought I could do. I didn't cook at all back then. And I prided myself on the fact that I didn't cook actually at that time. So I learned all these new things. I think I went into a Whole Foods for the first time, and I was intimidated by all these people who seemed to know what they were doing. And I didn't even know what an artichoke looked like. I remember trying to find one and having to ask for help and then going home and trying to figure out how to cook the artichoke. And then it was like a big experience. And so this detox, gosh, it really changed my taste buds, and it did so much for me. And so I had such an experience. Did my migraines completely go away? No, but they turned into more sporadic migraines. They maybe were more like headaches versus migraines. I noticed enough improvement that I knew that I wanted to keep going. I felt better. In orange, oh my gosh, it tasted divine. I remember eating this orange and thinking like, this must be some specialty orange because it tasted so sweet and good. Turns out that taking sugar out of my diet changed my taste buds so dramatically that the orange just tasted normal. And so what I started to do is I started to reconnect with this body, this from the neck down. I started to get to know what it felt like to be in my body a little bit. And I also started to realize I didn't have to be, that my past didn't have to determine my future. I'll put it that way. And so anyway, fast forward, went to nutrition school, did a whole bunch of other stuff. And one of the first things I did was start teaching other people how to do these detoxes. And it was helping me a lot at first. And then as I share in this other video, which I can again link below, or it's on my Facebook page also, I started to see that all these people that I was guiding through were having such great experiences. And I was having those at some times, but in other times I was not. And I started to shame myself quite a bit. And I started to second guess myself. And I started to wonder, like, what is going on with me? And what I ended up finding out years later was that I had this genetic anomaly that really didn't allow my body to detox in the way that everybody else's was. Now, come to find out, 40, maybe 50% of the population have the same genetic anomaly called MTHFR, which again, I have a program called My Nutrition 360, where I walk people through an understanding of this kind of detox process, whether you have the MTHFR thing or not. The program is not just for people like that. But one of the things that really woke me up is when I was talking with my functional doctor about this conversation, she said to me, we only know it's about 40 or so percent because those are the people who've been tested. And what I've been also finding when I chat with a lot of people, I have it's about, I think, 1,700-ish hours right now of coaching people one-on-one. And so I have a lot of experience of hearing people's stories. And there's a lot of people who tell me that they don't want the genetic testing because they don't want their stuff sold, which I totally get, by the way. I'm kind of irritated my crap was sold. So about a little over a year ago, I teamed up with a functional medicine company that has very strict laws about selling their things, and I've done a bunch of their trainings, and so I can help you order your genetics if you ever need to and help you read them. And if I can't read certain things, then I refer you to people who can, because it's a lot of stuff. Like, there's no way one human, I think, could understand all the details of our genes and our genome. But the point I want to get to is that there's a lot of stuff going on here. And I'm sharing a little bit of my story, not just so you can just know all my stuff, but mostly so maybe if you relate, you can start to see this one thing. And that one thing is that it's not one thing. So sometimes we want the magic pill. And I know a lot of people talk about that, like, We just want to get it fixed by tomorrow, because our culture wants immediate gratification in every way, shape, or form. There's pretty much everything you want we can have. Like, I'm sitting there one day on the soccer field with other mothers watching our kids play soccer, and like somebody mentioned something they liked, and I'm looking around, and like all the women next to me, and a few men too, are all there on Amazon, like buying it right there. So immediate gratification. Your health isn't always immediate gratification. The relationship that you have with your body is not always immediate gratification. Let me give you a perfect example of this. So I hired my first life coach when I was 19 years old. And so I started doing all this life coach work. And then I got certified to become a life coach when I was about 21 or 22, somewhere in there. And I found those journals, which I still have. And I was looking through them 10 years after the fact that I wrote it. So I guess it's in about, anyway, we're not going to do the math on the years right now, too much to think about. But the point is, about a decade after I wrote in those journals, I found them and I was reading them. And I started to read these goals that I had, and I started to read about the beliefs, the limiting beliefs that I was struggling with when I started out in that life coaching space. And I was reading about some of the problems that I was dealing with in my life. And I won't forget this day. I remember where I was in my kitchen. I fell to my knees with the journal and I just started crying. And part of the reason why I started to cry was because at that point I had just spent I realized how much money I had spent in over a decade. Now, I've been in this industry now 20 years, so this was about 10 years ago, but I had spent so much money on my personal growth and doing all the different kinds of modalities, and I realized reading that journal that I was in kind of the same place that I was 10 years prior. I had still the same stuck kind of habits. It was just kind of different, right? Different world, but the same stuff, the same root cause. And by the way, I'm not dissing all of the personal growth things, because I also believe that a lot of that stuff builds upon itself. A lot of the therapy, a lot of things that I did got me to the next point and to the next point, to the next point. Even the falling to my knees dramatic moment was really probably quite helpful for me to really see. But I also really had to get clear with the shame that I hadn't grown as much as I thought that I had. And one of the things that was important for me to look at was that my body still was hanging on to a lot of trauma, which I still work through even in this moment. I'm still working through that connection. This body that we have has so much capability and so much potential. And so our DNA is not our destiny. And so one of the things that I learned is, my body's not detoxing. And so what I did is, of course, like many of you, I got completely lost in Google and all the other things. And I'm very fortunate because I also am in this space where I have so many colleagues that are in nutrition and health and wellness, and in psychotherapy and trauma and somatic experiencing and like all the things. Like, I feel like I am so lucky because I have this huge community of people that I can reach out to and say, hey, I need some help. But we don't always ask for help, right? We think we can do it on our own. And I did a lot of that. But I also did a lot of the victim stuff too, where I felt like I was a victim to my body. I felt like I was a victim to my DNA. I felt very much like a lot of my life has been quite up and down, roller coastery with food and with body and with health issues, lots of those kinds of things. And so I would just automatically assume, like, I guess it's just going to have to be this way. I guess I'm just going to have to live with this. I'm going to have to live with this experience. This is just the way my body is. And I started to realize, and this was the big turning point for me, that I no longer had to be a victim to my experience anymore, and that I could make the changes. But those changes were going to take a few things. They were going to take one, me actually not putting so much darn stuff on my to-do list, because I would make these long, and honestly, I still do it. Like, I'm sitting in front of a huge to-do list right now, but like, I realized though, on that to-do list, you'll see there's 1s and 2s and 3s, and they're categorized into what is the most urgent and most important thing for me to focus on. And we kind of need to have that to-do list with our body. And sometimes we need somebody to help us along when it comes to our food, to help us see things a little bit differently. We also might need somebody to help us reconnect ourselves from here to here, from the head to the heart, but also from not just thinking so much, but also figuring out what that thinking is doing when we are experiencing our body at the same time. And what I mean by that is that, and we can take some risks in moments that we might not have taken. We can try new things that we're maybe a little bit afraid to try. We can realize that there's an opportunity for us to grow our knowledge and our skill level in regards to food and our body. And these things, crazy enough, are super triggering. When we talk about food and body, these are very primal things. Sex, by the way, is also a very primal thing. This is how we procreate. Food is how we stay alive. Our body is what keeps us alive. Like this is our home, our vessel, right? And so changing things, even though we all say we want change, it can be so triggering and very, very hard also. And so sometimes having somebody there to help us and kind of pull us along or allow us to see things from a different perspective can be really powerful. Crazy enough, those years that I was, and I still, by the way, teach people to detox their body in my programs. I do that, but it's not a cookie cutter canned and clone thing, because what works for my body may not work for your body. And everyone has this unique physical body. So when we come out with some headline that says like this blank diet is the thing that works, it's just not true. It just can't be for everybody, right? When we say that, I'm not going to go on a tangent of the diet industry. That'll be a whole nother conversation. In fact, I just talked about that last week. So I have something on YouTube and my website about the diet industry, which we'll continue to talk more about. So in a nutshell, without just rambling on, there's things that we can do that all start to add up with each other. It's little changes with our food. It's getting to know what our body really needs. It's healing some old trauma maybe that we've had in our body for a little while. Because here's the thing, trauma is kind of a tricky subject, and that's a whole conversation in and of itself. But one person that I work with, she just kind of reminded me that your body doesn't have a concept of time. So if you experience some trauma as a child, your body might still be kind of experiencing that in the same way currently, if you haven't done the work or the healing work to start to look at it. And that really shows up how we interact with stress. And then that kind of, snowballs into how we might interact with the Oreo cookies that I was so fond of and the Snickers bars that I liked so much. And then that kind of interacts a little bit with our cravings. And then that also, of course, leads to looking a bit at like, okay, well then what is our DNA? What is it that our body really needs? And then looking at a broader, more objective perspective and saying, okay, wait a minute, maybe this is my DNA, but this is also not a life sentence. It's not my destiny. I can actually impact my cells and my DNA to show up different by changing my environment. And so there's just so much. And sometimes we need help. Sometimes we need somebody to see. I mean, I've been doing this, like I said, for quite a long time, and I have a lot of people who help me, thankfully. And I feel like that's growing more and more because I'm learning how to trust more and more and to lean on other people and to kind of let them support me in a way that I haven't before. And I think that's part of the key is talking with each other, and community. Just can't say enough about it. So in a nutshell, if you need help, reach out, support yourself by reaching out and asking for help, whether it's me or somebody else. And secondly, I'd love to hear, what resonated with you, breathing your body and just kind of checking in and asking yourself, like, what did I learn from this? And please share it below if you have an interest. I'd love to hear. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. And if you're listening to the recording, a wonderful day. And we'll talk soon. Bye-bye, everyone.